Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Go ahead, bro. From your live, go ahead.
But I don't even hear you again. Well, hello. This is another Friday, and this is when we talk about things related to literature, history, and every other thing in between. My co-host, my able co-host is still in Africa, and we hope that she is doing fine and getting ready to return to the United States. The last time I was here, and that was the first day of the year, I was here and we chatted on things to do with being an informed citizen. Being an informed citizen meant that we had to keep alert, that we had to be out there looking for information that is supposed to benefit us as individuals, and that is supposed to benefit us within a community context and also as a citizen of a country. We thought to top it out a little by talking about, as you see in the banner, which is the headline, we wanted to talk a little about education. And the question is, why get it? And as soon as we talk about the question of why get it, then it presupposes the fact that we believe that all education has to be acquired. And sometimes we lead to the point of talking about acquiring it formally. But the first part we want to talk about, and then we roll into our key focus today, is that of education has to do with experience. And if it has to do with experience, then it goes without saying that everybody is educated. If you want to ask, you want to go to a place and you ask, where is the place? And someone explains that to you, that is a form of education. So education can be formal and it can be informal. In the informal situation, we say that everyone is educated. You are educated about where your next meal is going to come from. You are educated about how you're going to keep yourself clean. You are educated about how to respect older people, and of course, older people will respect you. Today's focus, which is education and how we get it, focuses on It deals with one uh, educator, an American educator called Max Rafferty. Max Rafferty. Actually, the whole thing is Maxwell. Max Rafferty, and it's Rafferty. He served in several capacities. By training, he was an educator. He was a writer, did several books, and he also had a stint with politics, uh, where he served 2 times in the California state uh, legislature. He's dead now. He died. He was born 1917 and he died in 1982. He has this very interesting uh, essay. I taught that essay when I was teaching at the University of Liberia, and I think I taught it here because of the interesting themes he has in the essay. I taught it here as well. Uh, those who may have sat under me and a few of my colleagues at the University of Liberia uh, may remember that essay. It is titled The 5 Main Purposes of an Education. Before we dig into it, we've always talked here about the importance of defining terms. Whenever you have a concept to discuss, whenever you are even starting an argument or what have you, it is important that people understand the terms of the argument. If you say that education is Y, you must be able to explain that why. If it is Z, you must be able to explain that. It is only through that explanation that if someone is going off target as far as the discussion is concerned, you are likely to say, wait a minute, I thought we said that this word meant this and not the other one. So why are you confusing us, or why are you confusing the audience? So Max Rafferty starts, the beauty about writing is that you must be able to begin in such a way that you draw in your reader. Others may start an essay beginning with a small or short story, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, and then get to others may start with a set of questions, hoping that throughout your essay, you are going to answer each of those questions, or you will leave 1 or 2 for the audience to explore. By the time they come to the end of the essay, it is assumed that you have set the stage so well that the 1 or 2 questions that are left for answering will be answered. There was a French philosopher called Jean-Paul Sartre, S-A-T-R-E, and then you have a mark on the E. He said that the work of an artist is to begin a conversation, and the work of the audience is to complete that conversation. So in the case of talking about giving a set of questions and leaving one or two for the audience, that is what I was talking about. In the Max Rafferty essay, he talks about an old philosopher who was one day met. He was met by a by a goddess, Minerva, Minerva, and the Olympian visitor, they will call her. The Olympian visitor had come in to kind of give a pat on the back to the old philosopher. She said something like, well, you've been in this thing for so long, you've taken much interest in philosophy, and therefore I've come to reward you a little. Just ask me any question. Just ask me any question. And then the philosopher uh, asked her to explain a few things about a few words. One of them talked about truth, talk about virtue, talk about justice. So please explain to me what those concepts or what those words are. And then she told the man to simply define his terms. In other words, understanding begins with fully understanding the definition of terms. And so, as I said, in writing, there are several ways in which you can begin an essay or even begin a novel. And so, what you do, the lady who came to visit the old philosopher said, define your terms. So, using that as a ruse, uh, using that as a beginning point, uh, Max Rafferty begins to define the term of education. But then he points out, he said, well, someone had written me to talk about education. This person had said, you've been talking around education, but you haven't, told people what education means. And then in a way of answering that person, Max Rafferty said, well, this person was asking for one definition or the question of what is the purpose of education? What is the purpose? Why do people get education? Why should people get education? Or why should education be supported? He said there is not one, but 5 purposes. Now you have to keep in mind that this is from the perspective of one person. You can easily accept that set of purposes, or you can start your own. I thought to emphasize that point because we go through a lot of things, we say a lot of things, we do a lot of things, but many of us never pause for a while to ask ourselves the question, why am I doing this? Why do I say this? Why do I act this way? It is not enough to say, well, I met people doing it, that's why. No, it has to go beyond that. You've got to be able to find, after dealing with this thing for a while, you should be able to find a way of even adding something to your understanding as far as the concept is concerned. So Max Rafferty, from his experiences, mind you, he taught in the classroom, he even rose to a position of superintendent. It's one of the high positions in education. You start as a teacher, you go to a principal, And then, of course, in a place like America, you go to superintendent level. Of course, back home in Liberia, we talk about CEO, county, a DEO, county executive officer, and CEO, county executive officer as well. So depending on where you are, there's a possibility that there might be a certain nomenclature as far as the field is concerned. So here he is talking about the five main purposes of education, at least from his perspective. So we are going to just go through them and then pause for comments, as we always expect people to do, or to pose questions as need be. So he said that there are five main purposes of education. The first, he talks about uh, the need to pursue truth. The need to pursue truth. Now, what is truth? Yes, studying truth. Okay. So look at the first one. What is a truth? In uh, recent times, one of the concepts that people have assaulted has been truth. What is truth? Um, First of all, truth surrounds an experience that an experience that we feel with the senses. We have five senses. Huh? Something to do with the eyes, something to do with the nose, something to do with the ears, and what have you. Five senses. Within the context of truth, we are expected to experience something and talk about it. Something that is unimpeachable. In other words, it cannot be denied. So in education, we train people to a kind of assess what is true. If you say that you saw something, there has to be evidence within it. So truth and evidence work together. Truth and truth and evidence work together. Evidence is what brings in the senses. If I say that something is hot, I must feel the heat. If I say that something is delicious, in Liberia, we always say something that makes you go back into the pot every now and then. We say that thing's sweet. That cassava leaf sweet. That that what is it? That uh, cabbage sweet. You know, that's what we do. But actually, if something has to do with uh, edible and not having the kind of taste bud, taste buds type of sensation towards sweetness or something of that sort, we say regular food, we say the food is delicious, it's tasty or something of that sort. So that is what truth is all about. That there is evidence when you say something or describe something, it has to be in such a way that there is evidence to go along. And if you cannot produce the evidence, then someone will have to kind of, shake the head a little and say, well, yes, you say you saw that, but either you produce a photograph or someone might have been with you. Something of that sort. Anything that is supposed to convince people that what you are saying, what you are describing is true, represents the whole concept of truth. So in education, we teach people the skills to pose questions. Many times, Messiah and I have talked about ask questions. Do not take something whole hook, line, and sinker, and you want people to believe it. You must ask questions. So education again teaches us to pursue the truth wherever it leads. You may be in the media, may be a journalist or generally a media person. Part of what you are expected to do is to tell narratives that hold water, that people can, is like saying, when this person tells you something is like a check, you can take it to the bank. But if you are someone, when you say something, someone has to say, you go and check that thing there, or that man, what he's saying, or that woman, what she's saying over there. Uh, it's something, uh, it has holes in it. So we teach in education or in schools, we teach people to ask relevant questions, mind penetrating questions, so that whatever they say, there's evidence to back it. So he dealt with that. In education, we teach people to pursue the truth. Truth is an experience that brings almost all the senses in. Truth talks about evidence that we need to be able to support whatever we are saying. You don't expect, even say Professor Nagbe or Dr. Nagbe, I tell students, yes, you come under my voice because uh, there is the record that I have acquired certain degree of education. I have acquired certain degree of experience. That being said, you still need, not that you are questioning me, but when I say something, you want to go ahead and read a little more so that your own understanding will be expanded. And even as it is, you can even come to class and add on to whatever I've said. I give students that freedom to do it, and people ought to give students that freedom to be able to express themselves. Even if they pose a question, it may seem that they are questioning your authority, but you have to have a way of answering that question so that the student feels at ease that he or she has done some reading on the subject. So Max Rafferty moves on to the second purpose of education. He talks about matters sustaining the legacies of a people and the world. What that says is that every group, whether it is a large group or a small group, every group has a way of doing certain things. And that is called culture. Some 5 generations ago, my own people lived, your own people lived, other people's people lived. How is it possible that they are doing things close to or the same as people 5 generations or 6 generations away were doing the same thing? talking about food, talking about songs, talking about books, talking about the way of dancing, talking about the way of greeting people. So many things are involved in culture because 6 or 7 generations away, our people pass that way of style from one generation to the other. We may not be doing, like I said, we may not be doing it exactly as people 7 generations away did it. At least there are some aspects that continue on to this day. The uh, the diet, mm, the things we say, the things we do, all these things. So what education does is that it helps one group to pass on how they are living to another group. In that process, there is continuity of life. That is what culture, passing down culture from one generation to the other, that is what it does. If you left from the city and you went to the rural parts, the rural parts is the seat of the culture. The rural parts remain the seat of the culture because as people move to the city, people meet a lot more people that may not be the same as the group that's in uh, a specific village. If you go to uh, Town, if you go to uh, Butuo, if you go to Fish Town, somewhere in Riverside area there, and what have you, if you go to Plebo, uh, if you go to some part of Kit Mount, far from the city, where there are vehicles, dances that others have not heard, and all that. That is where the seat of the culture is. And yet, we tend to bring some to the city, which is a mixed breed of people. But what education is supposed to do is to never make us forget our major ways of life. There are certain aspects that will change over time, but a good part of it is supposed to stay. And in the case of culture, uh, schools are supposed to encourage the people's ways of life. Of course, in the case of Liberia, uh, in the case of Liberia from the get-go has been a mix-up little place. Has been a mix-up little place. Uh, people who I call the Western flavor Africans returned. They came from America, they came from Europe, and even though our people, the indigenous people, were in their own little cultural cleavages, uh, these people, these brothers and sisters who came from the Western shores, were able to help plant what is called a nation state. A nation state is a, uh, a political and legislative environment that brings in people from all walks of life. So it becomes a place of diversity. So while the state is there to keep everything together within the state, there are so many cultural groups that are working together, hopefully with one purpose. The purpose is to sustain uh, the multiplicity of the groups, so that while the multiplicity of the groups are there, each doing its own thing, together they are keeping a nation state. What is expected of the nation state is that, in as much as the celebrating of diverse cultures does not destroy the nation state, we expect uh, that nation state uh, to encourage the cultural life of the people. That is why it is important uh, that even at a lower level, uh, the variety of cultures teach their young ones at least the basic things about their individual cultures. If you can teach your child a few things about greeting and all that, you should be able to do that. If there are certain concepts about how to interact with your peers, how to interact with your older people and what have you, you should be able to do that. And the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Information should be able to fuse a lot more things together. I know as a nation state, we officially started on English. In fact, there's this guy, Alexander Cromwell, one of the founding fathers from the West, uh, was a kind of denigrating uh, indigenous languages and what have you, but that is far off now. We should, especially with a lot more indigenous people educated, they should think it's a shame to either discourage the speaking of indigenous languages and what have you, or to outright reject and all those other things. People, as they enhance their learning and what have you, and that is what education does as well, they should be able to provide pathways. Some time ago, I heard that indigenous language programs were taken off LBS. I hope that is not true, because if it is true, then an aspect of education is being destroyed right there. English is there. I will not put down English, but I cannot celebrate English and only English, because I am several parts, and I'm sure a number of you uh, who are in the audience here, uh, I hope, are of several parts as well. I know that some, maybe not the fault of theirs, uh, did not have the opportunity to be able to have started with indigenous languages. In this, one of the few guys I want to send kudos to is Dr. Tipote, Tugwana Tipote. He was Rudolph Roberts. He started off, his parents again came up, they're indigenous people, but they came up through the Kui way. And therefore, it was almost a punishment for people in such homes to speak indigenous languages. But Dr. Tipote uh, forced himself, and it was after he got all his degrees and what have you. So he is far better in speaking Kru than he was, or than some of those who, like him, grew up and never turned their way towards an indigenous language. The point I'm making here is that people say if there is a will, there's got to be a way. And so they excuse that. I was out there, my people never taught me that thing there. Uh, oh, you can talk that thing too. Talk what thing? Yeah, you're part of your heritage. part of your culture. That's what you're talking about. So if you have to find someone to teach even a few lines in your indigenous language, please, if this session of our uh, if this session of our uh, literary hour will inspire you, please, it's never too late. And when you are learning it, don't don't do it in such a way that you are just trying to play fun. Sometimes uh, there are people, if you are singing an English related song and you miss it, it's like you have failed your Parama. But when it comes to your indigenous language and you make mistake, you start laughing it out. No, you should be able to get serious, people. You should be able to get serious, because I don't care what you do. If you are from Africa and you are black, you are black, and there's you laughing off your cultural thing is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Even your name, somebody, my name Nagbe, is so disappointing. Some people spell it uh, Nagba. The A over there is not a realistic A. It is more of a is you have to go to phonics and all that. So Nagbe, the E has an A sound. So if you say Nagba, is Nagba. I'm not Nagba. I'm Nagbe. You see, so you can multiply what I'm talking about. Make sure, if you are interacting with uh, someone with an African name, make sure you get the right spelling. It's a sign of respect as well. The idea that you will spell somebody's name and it's not the right spelling is a sign of disrespect. Somebody will laugh at, oh, hey, I thought it was this way. No, ask the person or find it. Can you imagine a name like Nagbe, and somebody to this point does not know how to spell Nagbe, one of the key indigenous names in the place there? But anyway, that's a different matter. So what I'm saying here, Max Rafferty has talked about pursuing the truth. He talks about being able to hand down what? The lifestyles, the way of life of the people, the culture of the people. I will give this third one, then I'll pause for 5 or so minutes so that if there are questions or if there are statements, then we'll talk about them. Max Rafferty talks about education providing truth, or education being making it possible for us to pursue the truth, education being making it possible for us to pass down to the next generation our ways of life. It's very much important for us to keep that in mind. The third thing Max Rafferty talks about is that education recognizes that learning has so many fields. Learning has so many fields. We talk about agriculture, we talk about law, we talk about science, we talk about even biblical studies and what have you. We talk about a whole line. Nowadays, we even have social work which has to do with uh, treating or handling the welfare of the variety of vulnerables in society and what have you. And he says that education helps us to find uh, things to teach in each of these fields. That is what he's talking about. So if you are doing writing, if you are a writer, you have a specific field to go into: literature and all the history, political science, so many. That is how to this day you find out when you go to a university or you go to a college, they ask you, what are you interested in learning? Or sometimes they don't ask you, you come from a home that understands these things very well, and therefore, by the time you get ready to go to school, they are able to provide you some learning tips to be able to work with. There are some who begin to go to school. They are the first in their generation. Their parents didn't go to school, and so it becomes difficult for them to do the planning. But if someone is interacting with other people and what have you, that person can draw lessons. That is why it's very much important as you are moving forward in education. You need to befriend a lot of people, especially those who have experience. Some of us, of course, my father, some who didn't have that opportunity benefited a whole lot by being friendly with other people. It is very much important for you to have friends who have more experience, and then they can help you out in doing that. I'll pause here, and then later on we will talk about the uh, the next two. Remember, we have talked about three: pursuing the truth, handing down heritage, culture, and of course, finding your way through organized uh, learning around a number of fields, and you choose your one and work with it. Uh, yeah, is there any uh, it has some question in Liberia. It has become about getting the people, but not the education. Yes, right, Eastman. It's most of people get to 2 by 4 degrees and think they. But these two questions are Brother Mulva and Brother Eastman. Uh, they are very much important. Uh, Education is not the paper alone. I couldn't agree with you more. Education is what you do. Education gives you uh, the knowledge, and people expect you to apply the knowledge. The how to, the knowledge, and the do must work together. People think it is just the paper, and that is why they end up just thinking that they can circumvent the grilling that goes with education. And that is sad. That is sad to circumvent the grilling aspect of it. Uh, Form must go with substance. Form must go with substance. If form does not go with substance, then there is a problem. There is a problem. So I agree with you. Both have to go together, form and substance. Uh-huh. Okay, interestingly, the French contrive education as not having academic knowledge or accomplishment, but rather having proper social etiquette. As actually, and the truth, if truth is empirical evidence, then I'm with that. But we must consider that facts and data can be obscured. Hence, the truth will not be known. That is true. In other words, engaging with a subject matter, engaging with a subject matter is very much important. If we do not engage with the subject matter, we lose a number of things. And in that process, we will not be able to bring the appropriate understanding to the audience. So again, I guess it will be a thing we'll be talking about here, which has to do with um, is education just form? Is education just form? As this person got a high school paper, this person got a college degree or whatever. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be more than that. Form and substance. Substance meaning understanding the knowledge thoroughly. That is why, in the past, when people used to do apprenticeship and what have you, it was not enough for you to recite what you were told, but being able to demonstrate. There had to be the demonstrating of what you had learned. That is how and why apprenticeship became a very much important, especially in a place like Germany, for instance. You know, you will get in the classroom, or you will get somewhere and get a hands the layout, the foundation of what needs to be done, and then there will be the hands-on type of thing. In our situation in Liberia, for instance, where a lot of young people became overaged as a result of the war, I think it's very much important for forums to be set uh, so that people will have uh, much of hands-on training. What you train to using your hands and all that, when you leave that particular venue, you should be able to do well than the person who is giving uh, oral communication, and that is it. So, Brother Mulva and Brother Eastman, the points you are making are very, very important. I appreciate you so much. Okay. Is there any other before we get to the last two quickly? Can we go? Hello. Okay. So as we were saying, uh, the guy is talking about Max Rafferty is talking about the five purposes of education. Why get an education? Well, you must be able to pursue and celebrate what it means to know the truth, asking questions, being critical thinker, using evidence to back up whatever you say or whatever someone says. The second purpose is to be able to pass down knowledge of your people, your ways of life, and what have you. Those are very much important. Without them, your society cannot continue, your country cannot continue, and what have you. So it's very much important. The other, which is the third, has to do with helping people to focus on a variety of fields. Do you want to be an accountant? Do you want to be a farmer? Do you want to be a musician? All these things are very much important, and education encourages all those so that every individual will have a way of finding his or her place in the groove. The fourth thing is that even though we say uh, fields of study are set up and what have you, there's another part which is helping people to know what their strengths and weaknesses are as far as learning is concerned. So, what education is supposed to do is to encourage people to identify uh, the fields, the subjects they are very much interested in, and help them pursue those specific areas. So, education, the purpose of education as well is making sure that uh, every individual understands why he or she ought to be passionate in one area as opposed to the other. There are people who do not understand the the volume of uh, their thinking, the volume of their skills and what have you, the volume of their talents, and therefore they might see someone going into a particular area, and because that person is a friend and what have you, they want to follow suit. Learning does not go that way. In education, the markers are laid out, and through that, students are helped to choose professions that will not let them down in a way, as I said earlier, where because John Brown, your friend, is into language areas, you want to go there when in fact your your talents, your acumen is best served as a mathematician and what have you. So each to a specific purpose, each to a specific choice, and that should be able to cut out frustration. Because if someone chooses a, a particular subject area that he or she is not suited for, it brings about frustration, and it might lead to truancy and all that kind of a thing. So the fourth purpose there, which has to do with helping individuals identify their skills level and what have you, is very much important as well. So we come to the fifth. We say pursuing truth, handing down heritage, uh, doing what? Uh, Helping people identify their fields and all that. Now we come to the last. Much of what you see he talked about is within a group setting, is within the perimeters of a country and what have you. Now he comes to the fifth one, which has to do with the nation. Like you talk about Liberia, education should be able to make us build Liberia together. Education is supposed to help us build the nation together. This is where things about the value system and all those things will come in the picture. As you go through education, as you go through the learning process, you are picking up vital lessons and what have you. And when all those vital lessons come together, you should be able to help the country survive. If your education does not inspire you to find ways for the survival of Liberia, then it is no good. I remember I had finished my master's and I'd gone to Liberia. And one day while I was walking to my office, I overheard a number of students, and they were planning to study. Some of them were already into studying accounting and what have you. And I sadly overheard those young guys, plotting to dupe the Republic of Liberia. Man, I'm in this thing here. As soon as I finish, and they make me an auditor and what have you, if 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 uh, if my client uh, owes Liberia uh, $40 million and what have you, and they just give me $500,000 or give me 1 million, and they go with the other one, what do I care? It made me feel so sad. And when I look back, I apparently they knew I was going to get pissed off. I just stood and looked around, and they all burst out and started laughing. I said, you were laughing, but rest assured, there are one or two among you who will do what you are talking about there. Education is supposed to discourage something of that nature. So as we wrap up, please keep in mind that education makes you or ought to make you someone of integrity, someone of decency, someone who has a set of core values that should be able, first and foremost, to help you sustain the country. Because if the country is not sustained, you are not sustained. If the country is, you know, uh, dilapidated, if the country is broken apart and what have you, you cannot. I know by the time you know something else, you want to get out of the country. But realistically, you ought to be able to help fight and make the country what it ought to be. After a while, you want to return and, of course, take whatever you have with you to the country to help build the country. So, why education? Education provides you individual meaning and provides you a towering capacity to be able to help build the country. As a way of rounding up, keep in mind that what we do here at uh, do here at Focus on Liberia is to provide things to think about, meaningful things to think about, and hopefully such things should help us sustain the country. Remember, if you're always saying something or doing something, what have you, every now and then pause to find out why you are saying what you are saying, what you are doing, what you are doing. In the case of what we talk about today, we talk about education. And the question is, what are the purposes of education? And those are the ones related here. I'm K. Moses Nagbe. Uh, my able partner is not here. I hope she's feeling well, and I hope that she has traveled mercy and returned. At controls was our own man, Mr. Dennis Jar, this visionary who has been helping to keep this together. I come to the end of the Friday session, and I hope you have several more things to reflect on. Think about your cultural things and what have you. We'll see next week, and by that time, I hope Miss Jackie Sayegh will be here, and we'll have a more robust time as opposed to just one person talking. But for now, remember, Liberia is the key thing. Liberia is our place. We are all Liberians, and let us all pull our resources together and use our education not for the destruction of Liberia, but for the elevation of Liberia. Thank you so much for listening.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Either you raise it or we want. Liberia, oh. Either you raise it or we want. Liberia, be Liberia. Oh, Liberia.